academic and experts, analysts on energy and international affairs. And if I'm correct, you are in Berlin. And this is excellent because Benjamin hinted at it, the new German government will have, and Svetlana as well, may have some new role to play here, or might do so. Let's see. Could you tell us a bit more of how you assess things there? Whether the acceleration of Germany's energy transition will mean actually more natural gas in the short to medium term, that is, a higher dependence on Russia and Russian gas, obviously. And what's your view on the external hydrogen strategy the Germans will be pushing much more heavier, as we understand? The floor is yours for 4 minutes. Thank you. Your mic. Sorry, your mic.
Greetings. Nice to be here with a fellow American physicist. There's a tradition in Russia and Ukraine too of this politics. So let me just say really quickly what you asked about. Yes, Germany needs much more natural gas. This is a dirty little secret that's been going on for a long time. The essential answer to both the questions you asked is that there is no grid scale storage. There's only niche storage in various places. Therefore, instead of storage, Germany needs to install lots of small compressors, turbines, gas sets all over the country to make up for what I might term something like renewables fundamentalism. And the hydrogen is an attempt, sort of a bit of a panacea to get around that. It has very limited niche uses. As a physicist, I could talk about it in great detail. I looked at it 20 years ago. But I'd like to say something about Nord Stream along the lines that Svetlana and Ben have already begun. The thing is, I think I've kind of had a theory for well over a year that Gazprom was in serious trouble and that they knew they were in serious trouble. But of course, when Mr. Putin or Miller are in serious trouble, they don't say, I'm in trouble. They act very arrogant and they act aggressive and so forth to sort of look like the strong man, right? So with the pipeline, there's two issues for Ukraine. One is the national security issue, the transit of gas giving some security to Ukraine against further military aggression. And the second one is the reverse flow supplies. If you're transiting gas, you get some reverse flow. You have a reasonably cheap way of getting gas. I will not talk about it now, but the first one, the national security, that's been lost. With or without Nord Stream 2, transit of gas, 40 BCM, whatever, does not provide that for Ukraine, unfortunately. But the second issue, if Nord Stream can be stopped or delayed, it will significantly help on that. So I think Gazprom faces serious difficulties getting the pipeline online. And it's been increasingly becoming aware that to them and to Mr. Putin, that their options have been narrowing for some years. I would say that they're currently on plan C. Plan A and B did not go very well at all. And I think the signals have been misread on our part about what some of the weaknesses. And I'll just say really quickly, if you go back in the beginning, when the pipeline was launched 9 months or so after the invasion of Ukraine, they listed a list of things in St. Petersburg with their partners that they wanted to do, their strategy. One was to have all the Western IOC partners as political cover. Another was that those IOCs would give the financing to make it, help them go to the bank, you could say, to make it a reasonable price. The construction, even though they had canceled construction because of the war, I mean, canceled, not postponed. It was a disinformation campaign. And they came out and said, we had done all the engineering, we're going to get it done quick. The idea has always been, both with the German side and the Russian side, to make it a fait accompli, to just start building no matter what, and make it a fact on the ground. And there was a couple other things. I won't go into it. But one very important thing was Medvedev, the guy from Gazprom, not the former president, said that, and he was put in charge by Putin, is that there will never be gas transit as long as the sun shines and the moon comes up, whatever. There will never be gas transit. We'll get this. He was ordered by Putin to build it before December 2019. So if you go through these, basically Gazprom failed at almost all of these, okay? Plan A was undermined, especially when their partners were removed by the Poles. I'm doing this a little bit out of perfect chronological sequence to make it simple, but the Poles killed that. The partners were out, okay? What happened then is they needed a plan B, and the plan B was they had to somehow argue that the third energy package didn't apply. When the third energy package is extended to offshore, that was really bad for them. And that's when they start going through all these legal gymnastics, ridiculous things that we would at first interpret as being arrogant, but later in retrospect, they were desperation. Arguing that a pipeline is complete when it's not complete, things like this. I could go on, right? Now, from the German side, the Germans are not against some, they just don't want strategic dependence on Ukraine. They're all for having some rump transit through Ukraine so Ukraine can support itself, basically, okay? So Minister Gabriel, who is the vice chancellor of Germany, went to see Mr. Putin secretly and made a state-to-state promise. We will guarantee that this will be taken care of under German law, not EU law. In return, you make sure there's some rump, there's still some transit through Ukraine. When it became clear that the German side could not fulfill this guarantee, a secret guarantee, it was released publicly. And I talked to people who worked in the Bundestag a week or two after. I said, what did the colleagues say? They said, well, Sigmar's never going to be chancellor after that came out, okay? So Mr. Putin was quite upset. This plan was not working, and a plan C was needed. And basically the plan C has been for a long time, the pipeline does have to be sold to another company. The legal ways that are being argued presently, I think even some of the German regulators and people look at it might smile when it's hard not to smile when you talk about it. Even people sympathetic to the Russians. And they had to sell the pipeline. And what's not understood, the American sanctions, I see in retrospect, or actually some of which at the time, it was not possible to physically stop the pipeline. The things that the Senate did turned out not to be effective. And the Germans, from the minute the sanctions were passed, the peace of sanctions in December 2019, made it clear to the Americans and made it clear, they called a meeting of 27 other countries in Berlin a few days later. This pipeline will be built. Nobody's going to stop it. We'll make sure. So they would simply call in allow the Russians to lay the pipe. However, what wasn't realized is that around March of this year, the American diplomats did some kind of crafty things. They went to the German banks.
Very quickly, Thomas, if you can finish with that.
The line is, nobody will buy the pipeline because of the sanctions effect. The sanctions have scared the hell out of German businesses, out of BASF, out of Cascade. Nobody will buy it. The Russians are stuck with it, and they know they have a very thin legal case, and they don't exactly know what to do. And this means that there's a good chance of stopping it either in Berlin, with the new Regierung, with the new government perhaps helping, or in Brussels, because the new government might not interfere in Brussels like the old government would. Maybe, maybe not. Or in the ECJ when the Poles and others sue, which will give at least Ukraine at least another, maybe another, I think the Germans will fight for a contract because now it's strategic for them that the contracts continue if this happens. Sorry, I took a bit too long.
Thank you very much. Also for providing a bit the historical view. It's true that it's a long geopolitical battle that is raging for a couple of years already. Let me now close this first kind of panel part and move to the